So yeah, welcome everyone. I'm very happy that you could make time. Not everyone could make time, especially at the beginning of the teaching semester. So yeah, very happy that you could be here for a presentation of our invited professional in the context of a faculty and university grant. I should also mention that from ELTE. I'm very grateful for that, of course. And this is Professor Gijsbert Stoet. From the University of Essex, from England. And yeah, specifically, he's a professor in psychology there. And, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but he has a background in cognitive psychology, educational research, and neuroscience. And his work, in broad terms, focuses predominantly on individual differences in relation to cognitive ability. Yeah, his work is well cited. He has over 2,500 citations. Of course, I looked everything up. And most importantly, well, I don't want to say most important because, of course, your impact extends PsyToolkit. But very importantly, he's the creator of PsyToolkit, which is a really excellent platform for the implementation, the development and implementation of psychological tests and cognitive psychological experiments in the online domain. So he will be talking about PsyToolkit. And yeah, lastly, I'm very honored that he accepted our invitation to be to present here today. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Alexander. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to the faculty for inviting me. It's a real honor to be here. It's the first time that I'm in Hungary, and I arrived yesterday. It's a beautiful city. It's really amazing. And I'm staying in a very nice hotel, so I'm really glad. Last night, Alexander invited me for dinner. So far it has been a really good stay. And I'm really looking forward to giving this presentation. And also, people thank me for giving this talk, but I actually am also thanking you for being interested in this tool. I often feel the opposite. You know, I feel, oh God, people are interested in something that I have created, which means a lot to me. It's actually really nice if you make something and people actually use it. That is, you know, I think for anyone, of course, it's nice. You know, so thank you for that. And now I assume you already know a little bit about PsyToolkit just by raising hands. And who has never used PsyToolkit? Because just, yeah, that's good. Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that, because otherwise some of my talk would be, you know, too easy or too difficult, depending on what people say. So if something is really difficult to understand, or if my English is unclear, also just tell me, because of course I'm aware of the fact that, first of all, I'm not a native English speaker, neither are most of you, so let me know. Just raise your hand and say, well, what are you talking about, okay? Okay. I have many slides, actually, and we just see where we go, okay? So it's really difficult to plan the time exactly. Now, first of all, the first slide here, I just want to say a few things about that. PsyToolkit, and I will come into that, of course, is something that you can find on the internet, right? It's a web page, partially. And when I created this, I thought I need a logo, right? So, because without a logo, you're nothing. It's just a word. So at some point, I like drawing on the computer. So I drew this funny man. It's very easy because it's just two circles and some lines. But I thought that's good, you know. Orange, I like the color orange. It has nothing actually to do with my nationality. I'm not interested in the royal family. But yeah, so I thought that is funny, you know, like there has a little bit, so if you see something, if you see this logo, it just means, oh, that's PsyToolkit. PsyToolkit can be found on also has a Twitter account. I use that for if there is something really important that I want to say. For example, the computer is down for maintenance, or or if there's something new. I have a YouTube channel for tutorials, and I also have a Facebook channel. I don't like Facebook very much, not because of politics or something or how they do things, but just if you run it in a browser, it's just really slow and messy. So it's actually, I get really frustrated about Facebook. So I only occasionally post there, but there are actually many people who seem to follow that. All right. Now, so that's just sort of like a warm-up slide. So now in my next slide, I want to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, I want to say a few words about myself, because this is purely psychological, right? So when I go to a talk and there is somebody talking, first thing I always wonder, what sort of a person is this? Where does he live, or she, or, you know, what did this person before? So I always think it's good to say a few words about who you are. Then the second thing is I will talk about what PsyToolkit is, and I will give you a very short history, okay, not a long history, just sort of like how it came about. And then the main thing is what PsyToolkit can do for you. So that's where you're here for. Okay, so about myself, right? So Alexander pronounced my name correctly, which I'm not used to, because normally nobody in England can pronounce my name, which is really frustrating. I often go by Gilbert because that's what I can pronounce. But that was everywhere, in Germany as well. People find it difficult. So I studied psychology actually in the Netherlands. So here's a map. This is Great Britain, of course. This is the Netherlands. I was born here in The Hague, just in case. So this is very close where I'm now at the University of Essex. But I have actually, in my life, I have worked in different countries. I studied for my PhD in Germany, in Munich. And after that, I worked for almost 10 years in the United States in the field of neuroscience, working with monkeys. And that's where I really started to work on this type of software. So I'm trained in cognitive psychology, and that really influences the way I have set up the website. I've worked in cognitive neuroscience, doing single-cell recording in the brain. And as Alexander said, I'm really interested in the individual differences. Why do some people think differently than other people? And I use that to study educational psychology. Why do some children learn better than others? And also, I have worked in the field of psycholinguistics, actually, a long time ago. So that's sort of like my professional background. And so if you wonder where the University of Essex is, so here is London, and here, sort of like on the coast, there is Colchester, that's the town. It's the oldest town of England, in case you know, that was founded by the Romans 2,000 years ago. And then it was burned down by some British woman. I think she was really angry. And then they rebuilt it with stone walls, part of which is still standing. So if you come to Colchester, let me know. I'll give you a tour. It's very nice, actually. So that's that. Okay, so now we come to PsyToolkit. It's always good in any research presentation to say what the definition is. If you talk about anything, you know, what do you mean actually? So what is PsyToolkit, okay? What's the definition? Well, first of all, it is a website, as you probably already know. And this website can be used for different things. So one is you can just use it for learning. That's very good for psychology students. By the way, how many of you are a student, a psychology student? Oh, that's very good to know. Okay, good. So if you're a student, that's good. Okay. So this website, so you know, I think most of the users of PsyToolkit are psychology students. But you can also do online research, and researchers such as Alexander and other people, they use it also to run professional research. And second, PsyToolkit is software, and that runs actually on this central computer, which runs the website as well. It can also be downloaded for Linux computers, but I'm not going to talk about that further, but if you're interested in that, you can send me an email. I can send you the Linux version. So the PsyToolkit software can be used via this website, psytoolkit.org. When you use PsyToolkit, you do not need to download anything. It runs all in your browser, which is a real advantage, I think. But if you want, as I said, you can download it. Okay. If you go to the website, this is sort of like what the website looks like. I don't know how easy this is to, you know, you don't need to read the details, but this is just what it looks like. The logo is always there. On the left, this is, you know, a picture taken last year. There are just sort of like different things you can do, so you can go through the website, try it all out, and then sort of like, you know, you can go through this. Now, one of the main things that you can do in this website is if you go to the web-based version, then there is a, you know, don't look at the details here, but there is something on the system where you can log in. You can set up your own account, and we're going to talk about this. And then you can log in. Before you do that, please like it on Facebook. Sometimes helps, actually. But you can log in, and then you go into your own account. And we're going to talk how that actually works today and how you can use that. But so it is an interactive website. You can work with it and set up your whole study. All right, okay, so now let me give you a really short history. Okay, just in a few lines. Okay, so I started this whole project in 2005. I just started with a desktop version because I work with Linux computers, which are different from Windows, and then I thought it's practical to have. I developed it, you know, for a couple of years. Not so many people probably using it. The first paper about PsyToolkit was published in Behavior Research Methods, which is a prominent journal about psychological methodology. So that's already 10 years ago. In 2012, I really created the whole online interface, and I improved over that. And in 2017, I wrote a second paper in the journal Teaching of Psychology, because it is used by so many students. And then, of course, now it's 2020. PsyToolkit continues, you know, to increase in popularity. I will say a little bit about that in a moment. But so what you see, this system has been around for a long time, and it is really a one-man project, which is good and bad to some degree. So it means that it really depends very much on me. The nice thing of that is that I can make decisions very quickly and maintain it. And I spent quite a lot of time actually on doing that. Now, who uses PsyToolkit? It is mostly psychology students and psychology researchers. But yeah, there are also quite many linguistic students and researchers. And interestingly, people in sort of like music research, they also use it. This is in part because it's quite easy to run audio files in experiments and in the website. So you can have a background audio that plays, for example, only one time. And then people have to say, well, do you like this music? Or, you know, how does it sound to you? There are users around the world. Most of the users are in the United States. That's of course because it's a big country with more than 300 million people, and psychology is very popular there. Then the second biggest user group is in the United States. United Kingdom. And in France, we have many users. Hungary is on number 10 of sort of like, just if you just count the users who have an online account. Good. Now, okay, so that's all sort of still background, okay? So just to get you in the mood thinking about this whole PsyToolkit thing. Now okay, and so there are also, by the way, so it is being used in research. There are more than 300 studies which cite PsyToolkit. And I just looked on Google Scholar, okay, so just who cites this. It's very important that if you do a study with PsyToolkit, that you cite both the papers. That's sort of like an agreement. And now if you log into the website, for example, there is, every time you log in, there's a pop-up that you need to click cite it, because what I noticed is that there are actually quite many people who use it but don't cite it, which is, you know, it's free of cost, but one of the things that benefits me is that people cite it so that I can tell my people in the university, look, I'm not doing nothing here when I'm coding, you know, actually has some benefit, okay? All right, so now we come to this whole issue. What can PsyToolkit do for you? And this is sort of like a pathway slide, and this will come back in the talk. Now imagine that you are this person here, okay, the smiley face. Now first of all, there are two paths you can take, okay? Now the first thing you can do is just learning. And this is of course very useful for psychology students. And the second thing that you can do with it is setting up your own study. And that is useful for psychology students who do a research project or a practical in which you need to collect data, like doing a survey or doing a cognitive experiment. And setting up your own studies, there are two types of studies, basically I already said it. One is you can set up just a questionnaire, like a personality questionnaire, or a clinical questionnaire, you know, about anything, where you just ask questions. Are you a man or a woman? Are you depressed? You know, this sort of psychological questions. That's very popular in psychology, especially for student projects. And so that's one thing you can do. And the second thing is that you can set up an online experiment, such as you know, a Stroop task or a Simon task, task switching, inhibition tasks, you know, whatever you have. And we're going to talk about this. And also you can put these online experiments, you can make them part of a questionnaire. So you can ask people a few questions, you know, are you a man or a woman? How old are you? Where do you live? And then now please do the Stroop task. And that is really nice because then you can combine this demographic information with the results. This is, to the best of my knowledge, the only website that offers this possibility. I'm not aware of any other website that do it, certainly not for free. So I think that is partially why it is popular. And also then what's really important is that you can store your data, you can analyze and download your data. Again, there are software libraries out there, such as GS, Psych, and so on, but they're just software libraries. So they don't give you the tools that you actually need to run the study. So unless you're some sort of like a programmer, they are not useful at all. At least they are useful for some people, but not if you're just a student and you want to run a study. You don't want to learn to do complex programming. So PsyToolkit helps you, provides you the server for free. You can store your data there and so on. So that is, and this website, this page, this screen comes back in the slide because I'm going to talk about each of these things now so that you understand a little bit more about each of these things. So I'm going to start with just this green bit here, just learning. Okay, just learning. So how does that work in PsyToolkit? How can you, as a staff member, how can you use this for your students? Or if you're a student, how can you use it to learn more about both personality psychology and clinical psychology, but also about cognitive psychology. Now, I should say that I teach, of course, psychology, and one of the things that I like to teach most actually is personality and individual differences. So I use this in my own teaching as well. So for this, you will see that back later. Now, okay, just learning. So here's a quick overview. So on the website, it looks like this. So you have lessons. And this just gives you a very quick overview of the sort of things that you can do. So there are lessons for psychology students about the following. So first of all, as I mentioned, cognitive psychological experiments, such as a Stroop task, Simon task, okay? Then you can do reaction time experiments. You can learn about basic computer techniques, such as how to draw stimuli that you might need for your experiment. Personality and clinical educational measures, and lessons about how to use PsyToolkit. Okay, so this is detailed documentation about how you can use the system. I'll say a little bit more things about it, but so you can explore the website yourself where this is. You go to lessons and you see these things. I'll give you now one example of this. So for example, there is a page called Simple and Choice Reaction Time Tasks. Now, as you may or may not know, this distinction in cognitive psychology is quite important. When I teach this to students in the past, I always noticed, well, it's quite difficult just to explain this in words. If you just say what it is, actually, yeah, okay, but what does it look like? As a student, you want to know this. So the website explains the difference, but then also allows you actually to see it. And you can do the task yourself and see how fast you can respond. So here is this lesson that I just mentioned, simple versus choice response time tasks. So if you browse down, so I showed you this picture, yeah, works all fine. So what you have always is do it yourself, and you can click to try the experiment, and then you get something that looks like this. I click to start, and then it explains what you need to do, and you can, like, give some explanations. Don't ignore the details, but I can press respond to stimuli, and something happens. And the whole idea is that you can try out these things for yourself. Or if I go back, for example, there is one of probably the most famous experiment in cognitive psychology is the Stroop effect, the Stroop task. If you have a student learning about this, if you see a stimulus that is written in the same color as the word meaning, you respond quickly. When the word green is written in red ink, that's more difficult to respond to. It's difficult to say that the color is red. You probably know this. You can do this yourself in the computer, and then you have to respond to this, and then you get feedback, and later you can see how quick you are. Now, other types of lessons are on how to make stimuli for your experiments. This is quite important. So for cognitive psychological experiments, you often need to draw things such as, specific, a smiley face with a green mouth, or some things that you want. Okay, so how do you do that? What software can you use? There is good free software on the internet. One type of software is called Inkscape. It's freely available. It's actually very professional. It's very easy to make stimuli that are of high quality, and I have a short lesson on the webpage on how to do that for students. This is very practical, because if you do a research project, your professor asks you to do this, you just can go to the website, learn this for yourself. What is there also there is a large survey library. And this is really where it comes to personality research and clinical research. So this is one of, I think, the website with this is the largest website with online questionnaires about that you can try yourself and where you can read about the background. I'm not aware of any other one. Now, for every questionnaire that is on the PsyToolkit website, you need to know a few things. So first of all, you can use the surveys for your own research. There are no copyright restrictions on them. That's quite important. So for example, many students want to measure depression, and that's like really popular, at least in England, okay? So, and very popular scale is the Beck's depression scale. You have probably heard of it. You can find that as a Word document or as a thing on the internet, but that's actually not legal because the Beck's depression scale is copyright protected. So you should actually not use it. But there are alternatives for that, and you can find them on this website. There are all sorts of scales. I have all the scales I put on myself, and I've read all the articles behind it, so, which I really enjoyed because of this, making this website, I've learned a lot about personality psychology. And what I say to my students is that if you do all the 100 scales yourself, you learn a lot about yourself. Because for each scale, it says what your score is. So if you do a depression scale, you might find out you're depressed, for example, by comparing your own, or not. It's certainly optimistic here. You can compare your score, to that of the average population. And that's quite nice. And when I did many of these questions, I thought, oh, I never knew that actually. I had not expected that about myself. So I think it's quite nice. You can find out if you have really strange personality aspects, which is actually a nice thing to know. That's partially because I'm fascinated by personality psychology. I think people's character is one of the most interesting things. And it is really sort of like at the heart of psychology and what people think of psychology. So it's a real fun thing. And I had a lot of fun creating these scales for the website. One example that you certainly have heard of is the Big Five. The Big Five, of course, is one of the main personality profile questionnaires. Yeah.
Did you make these series, or did you collect them?
That's a good question. Yeah. No, they are all done by other researchers. There is not a single one that I developed. So that is a good point because because people often ask me, can we use this questionnaire? And I say, well, they are not mine. I just found the papers, and I've just chosen things that I thought were interesting or important for teaching. So the nice thing about the Big Five 10-item personality inventory is that it's only 10 questions, so it's really short. So it takes 5 minutes to fill in, and then you find out sort of what your personality profile is. What I also did is for many of these personality questionnaires, I added some background information I tried to find an interesting YouTube video where you can read a little bit about that specific aspect. I just spoke about the depression questionnaire. So a very common one, a good one I think that is freely usable is the KUDOS, the clinically useful depression outcome scale. And again, I always have some sort of like information about it on the website. If you're on the website, then you can run the demo, so you can do the questionnaire yourself. But you can also see how it is coded in PsyToolkit. So if you want to use the KUDOS in your own research, in your PsyToolkit project, you can just copy and paste that into your own online survey. You can just use it, plug and play. If you do the demo, it looks like this. For example, this is what the participant sees. You have a screen in which you have a number of scale questions. For example, my appetite was much greater than usual. Is not at all the case, rarely true, and so on, to almost always the case. And then based on these answers, a score is calculated, how depressed you are. And this is, how this basically works. Right, okay, so I want to say first a few things about now setting up your own studies. First, just how do you actually set up an account? Now, this is probably something you already know, but if you don't know it, and also for the video, maybe nice to say, setting up an account, of course, is very easy. You just go to website, you enter your email address. If you enter your email address, you will get an email back giving you a registration. It's just a registration email with a password, and then you use your email as your login detail. And you can also delete your account. It's not like Facebook where they try to keep they try to keep you forever. This is, if you want to delete your account, you just also, it's fairly easy. Okay, and then once you log in, you go to this online part of the website, you enter your email address, your password, and you log in. And then I will make it a little bit, because it's probably quite small to see, but then you get to this, first to the main web page, the first page that you see, and I will zoom in. So, okay, this is just quickly explained what you see. So this is the basic organization of what you see in your account. So there, in the top line, it always says PsyToolkit on the web. There's a version number. And that's quite important, actually. The version number changes regularly, but you can always use older versions. They stay active as well. The system gradually improves itself, and typically it is compatible with older versions. But it's always good to use the newest version, unless you already have a survey or a study that used an older version, maybe 2.5.3, and you can just keep logging into that. Now, on the left, there is a menu with all sorts of things that you can do. And at the bottom, you have your own studies, so it's your own experiments or your own surveys. And there's always a tip of the day. That's just, okay, so this, it tries to be somewhat user-friendly. So we have talked now about setting up your own studies. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how to set up your own questionnaire. I know some of you already know it, but let me go over that. First of all, actually, I want to say a little bit, why would you actually use PsyToolkit in the first place, which many people ask me. So some universities, certainly in England nowadays, they have a Qualtrics account. Have you heard of Qualtrics? So this is quite, they have aggressive marketing. They're very expensive as well. So I don't know, actually, I've never used it because I didn't find it that easy to use the Qualtrics website. I tried it last time, and I couldn't even set up a study, which...
It's easier than
It is, oh, that's good to know. Yeah, that's what people tell me. I didn't manage it, actually, to set up an account. Okay, that's good. It's very easy. You should show me later, or I ask my colleagues. Okay, so, but you can use Qualtrics, of course.
Still compatible with PsyToolkit.
Well, you probably can, but yeah, I mean, and
Match the data ultimately with
right.
an identifier, but I
Yeah.
used Qualtrics,
Okay.
SurveyMonkey, I believe, as well, together with
Yeah.
experiments implemented.
Okay, yeah, so okay, but yeah, I don't know how easy it is to use Qualtrics. Okay, I should study this. There's also Google Forms, of course. There's SurveyMonkey. There are actually many other packages that you can use. So the advantages of those packages partially is that some of them, they are easy to use. I mean, that's what people tell me. They look good as well, I must say that. I mean, so, also on the mobile phone, if you do one. So they look good. They have, of course, big teams to create these websites. So there's, and I'm not, good thing, I'm not a company. So in many ways, I like it if people use my software, but I'm not dependent on it anyway. So, but I noticed there are problems with these websites. So one is, I mean, certainly it's very expensive for departments to use Qualtrics. Do you have it here, or Yeah, so it is. It costs a lot of money. For that money, you could also buy really nice coffee for lunch or something like that instead. Which I don't know. Okay, so but yeah, people use it. Okay, so the free websites for students. Some of them, they are free, but then if you want to do more than 10 questions or many participants, they won't like it. But a main issue also with Qualtrics, I think it's not specifically designed for psychological research. I don't know if that's true or not, but so one of the nice things with PsyToolkit, I think, is that it starts with a web page, where it asks for consent information, and it is really inspired by how, certainly in England and in the United States, what you're supposed to do on the information screen. I don't know how easy that is on some of the other websites, but if I see Qualtrics questionnaires that I sometimes get, it doesn't look that good to me. All right, so anyway, so PsyToolkit is meant to overcome some of the problems with the commercial version. Certainly PsyToolkit is free to use, of course. You know that there are no limits in the number of questions they have, no limits on the number of participants or how long you want to run a study. You can let it run for years. Doesn't matter. There are also some special features. I don't know if other systems have this. So there's a nice opportunity to time questions. So you can, for example, say, well, this question should only be visible for 1 minute, and then it should disappear, and there's a counter on the web page. You can have downward or upward counting systems. It's easy to have conditional questions. Of course, you can do that in other systems. Not so easy maybe in Google Forms. But in Qualtrics, they have this. I don't know how that works, actually. I need to study that a little bit myself. But so in PsyToolkit, that should be easy. Randomization, all sorts of randomization in questionnaires. You can give people feedback about their answers given. So you can very easily calculate a score, their depression score, and tell people their score. You can embed experiments, of course. That is a specific feature of PsyToolkit. That's why it was created. And as Alexander also said, there are many ready-to-use questionnaires. So if you want to include a depression scale in your PsyToolkit study, you just copy and paste that. That takes 1 minute to do. So that's I think easy part of PsyToolkit. If you want to set up an online survey, in case you have not done that, here is what you see on the website. So you say, okay, create a survey. On the left, there's an option, create a survey, it says here. All you need to do is enter a name, and you say, create completely new online survey, and that's it. Your survey works, basically. Then you see a screen with a script that's being used for presenting it, and don't read it right now. But what it does, it always starts with 2 example questions so that you get a sense of, oh, this is what the scripting language looks like. You can just delete that. Or you can say, well, altogether, actually, I don't like this idea of having to script it myself. Maybe that's too difficult. If you think that that's the case, you can go to the easy mode. The easy mode actually is just click and do things. So then that looks like this. And then, for example, you would see these 2 questions. You can click on the question and you can more easily enter it without understanding the scripting language at all. Okay, so that works as well. So there are 2 ways to set up online questionnaires. So that should probably be as easy as Qualtrics. Okay, so go on. Okay, what does a survey question look like in PsyToolkit? Well, it looks like this. So you have you can set your survey name yourself. How many items are completed so far? The first question, of course, then it's 0%. Here, which of the following foods do you like best? That is an example question. In PsyToolkit, I call this sort of like question a radio question. And I will explain you why, actually. But that is a question in which you can choose 1 out of multiple options, but only 1. So which of the following foods do you like best? You can only choose 1. And then there's always a button at the bottom, and you have to click that to go on. So why is it called a radio question? Well, actually, my grandmother had a radio like this. These are these really old radios, and there were, at the bottom there were buttons to select a channel, and you can only select one button. If you click one other button, the other button pops out again. So that is why they call this in computer science radio questions. This is not something that I came up with. This is in computer science. You know, this is a very common interface choice. That's why it's called radio. Okay, because that was how it worked on old radios. So the type of this, so I'm going over quickly what types of questions you have. So that is very common. Choose one item out of a list. Okay, so this is common. We want this. Are you a man or a woman? You know, can only choose one, maybe two. I mean, nowadays, maybe. But okay, so apart from there, check questions where you can ask multiple items. So which of the following foods do you like? Orange juice, coffee, tea, you know, you can choose a whole bunch. In PsyToolkit, actually, there are many options to refine this. So you can allow people to choose only two. Or you can say, I want that people choose between 3 and 5 options out of 10. I'm not sure actually if you can do that in Qualtrics, where you can do that, where you can select the range of items people can choose in a check question. So, well, there's an option for it. There's something, I don't even know it. There's just a line you say O, colon, and then you say range between 3 and 5. I can show you later. Keep that question in mind. There are scale questions. You have seen that before in the depression scale, where you have a question, you know, how depressed are you, from not at all to very much, where people choose one between, say, 1 and 7 options. You can also have range questions, where you have a slider that you can move on the screen. You know, how old are you? And then you can slide between 0, 18, and 100. Sometimes, for certain things, that's easy. Thank you. Yeah, the slider has quite a few options. Also, the labels that you can select, all the sort of the labels that you have on the left or the right. So there are all sorts of options. You can show the number that people go on, but you can also hide that number if you want. So again, I mean, I don't think that Qualtrics necessarily has all these sort of like extra options to hide things. And usually when people write me, so for example, some guy wrote me like a couple of months ago, he said, well, I want that people can use the range, but I don't want them to show the answer. And I say, okay, that's fine. I just add it. It's not very difficult to add. So if you have, say, for our research, we really need this feature. Can you implement it? I usually do that. If it's something that I think, oh yeah, other people might want that too. Text line or text box, of course, is very common, where people can just write an answer, you know, how was your day yesterday, and write a short essay. You know, these are more difficult to automatically analyze, but they are commonly used, actually. People like this. You can say how big the size should be, how many letters they can enter, and so on. And you can also have multiple text lines on one screen. Very popular, actually, are the YouTube videos that you can embed. So you can show a video, and then you can ask some questions about it, like, you know, whatever it is. And you can also, instead of having a question, you can also just give information, just say something. For example, if you want to say your score on the depression scale was, and you can give a value, you can present values that people have given on previous questions. And well, that's that. So these are the sort of the types of questions online. There is, I'm going to make a new video next week, I think, explaining each of these questions with a short video tutorial, because sometimes that might be handy. And as I just showed you, this is what a radio question looks like. I already showed that example. Well, but what I'm going to do now, so this is what the question looks like for the participant. Now I just want to quickly show you, just for this question, how it is being written in the scripting language. Just showing you that it's actually very simple. So that question that you see here, right? So the question is, which gender do you identify with, male, female, other, or prefer not to say? I think this is a very good way, actually, to ask what gender people are, because nowadays there are people who do not identify as man or woman directly, or they might, but they might be transgender and not feel comfortable saying male or female. So that's, I think, why that option other is very good, or prefer not to say. We have thought really carefully about how to best ask this question in research, rather than having all sorts of options, which might also confuse people. So actually that's nowadays this is quite a tricky question to ask, but of course it's critically important in research. So this is how I do this question. But how do you code this? Okay, this is the script code. So these are a number of lines, and I'm going to explain each of these lines. So first of all, each question has, that's the L for label. That is the identifier. So L colon, and then I just called this question gender. You can have any name there. That is your identifier, because every question needs to have an identifier for your data analysis. Then the second line is the T for type. What sort of question is this? This is a radio question. There are many different types. As I said, in the easy mode, you don't need to do this. You can just choose it from a drop-down menu. But this is if you write it, right? So you say radio. Then the third line is the Q for question, and that is actually the line of text that the participant sees on the screen. What gender do you identify with? And then the bottom, these lines starting with a minus sign, hyphen, those are the options that people have. So that is what one type of question looks like. Now, it's actually, you program in R, so for you this is trivially easy. I think for a student who has never done something like this, might say, this is difficult, I don't want to do this. For those students, we have the easy mode, and then you can switch between this easy mode and the scripting language. You can see what it looks like. Sometimes actually that's quite nice. First you make yourself familiar with the easy mode. But one of the nice things, if you need to make a big survey, actually this is easy, especially because you can cut and paste these questions. And in the end, it's much quicker to use this sort of scripting language than actually the sort of like Qualtrics way, where you need to click every time. And then if you want to make another questionnaire, how do you copy all the questions? That actually is in the end, this is a sort of like interesting thing. The whole sort of like point and click interface is really easy for beginners because it's really quick. You don't understand the software, you just click around a little bit and you see how, oh, that's good, can do something. But if you're a little bit advanced, then actually it slows you down. It's the same with SPSS, which probably many of you use. SPSS is really nice software if you're a beginner, because you don't need to understand much. You just click on it and it works somehow. But if you need to write a lot of statistical analysis, it's terribly slow, inefficient. So if you just then it goes bang, you're really quick. So the learning curve is often steep. So in the beginning, you need to learn a little bit. But once you've learned, it actually goes really fast. So, it's ultimately up to users, what they do. But I always recommend, just play around a little bit. If you play around with this for half an hour, you understand how it works. In the end, if the computer, the type of answer that you get actually out is in the spreadsheet, you get actually, if people say I'm male, then the computer will say the answer was 1. It won't say the answer was male. So you need to always remember, okay, what was the question? And even if it's randomized, it always uses the sort of like the order that was in the questionnaire. But as I said before, so there's you can add an option random, and then it just, every time you click this question, you see a different order. Now for this specific question, it wouldn't make sense, but for other questions, of course it does. Now to continue with saying this, there are many options you can add to these sort of questions. This is the same question, but in this case, I have called I for image. You can put an image above the question. So sometimes just to make it more alive, if you do a questionnaire with children, or just people find it more exciting. What's also nice, you can add sounds to each question. Now, this might not be useful, but for certainly for music researchers, they really like this. And there's something really special about PsyToolkit. So now You can even have the option that people can only hear a sound only once, because this is some people don't want that people can replay the sound over and over. So you can you listen to the sound once, then it goes away, and then they need to say, okay, what did you think of this sound? But so there are many other options as well, and they're all in the documentation. There also, I'm not going to show you how it works, but there are these sort of like control questions or conditional questions. You know, for example, if you want to ask whether somebody is pregnant, so if the first question is, are you a man or a woman, you don't want to ask men whether they're currently pregnant. If you do a survey monkey questionnaire, you probably have to, because there's no way to skip that based on the previous answer. So you see these questionnaires, which is really frustrating for participants. So in PsyToolkit, it's relatively easy to have what in PsyToolkit is called a jump question. And then, you know, if people say they're a woman, then just some questions can be skipped. That's very straightforward, very easy to do. But again, you need to figure out a little bit, look at the documentation, how to do it. But it's not difficult. Now, you can randomize questions. This came up before in any way. So you can randomize the order of questions, or you can randomize within questions the items that people have. I'm going to add some new features to that in the future. So one thing that people often ask for is what people would like to do. They will say, I want that you choose, say, for example, 10 questions out of a total possible sample of 100 questions. That's something that you currently cannot do, but I'm going to add that feature, because I think that is something that people regularly ask. Other features of the online questionnaires are you can very easily calculate scores based on the answers that people gave before. So for example, if somebody answers questions about depression, you can calculate a depression score, and you can use that score to determine how other questions are being given. You can give people feedback. I would also like to say this to you, that one of the big problems with questionnaires is that I think nobody likes to fill in a questionnaire. I never like to fill in a questionnaire. You know, if you do a questionnaire, it's so boring, and then you don't get anything out of it. So what I think, if you want to do a good questionnaire, tell people their score. So for example, if you do a questionnaire about depression, unless that's a problem with your the aim of your study, it's quite nice to tell people, well, you know, your depression score is this, that is below or above average. That's nice, because people like to get something out of the questionnaire. Then they know, oh yeah, I learned something about myself. That's actually an incentive for people, because we have done questionnaire studies in the past with students, no one signs up, which is really frustrating. You know, you put a lot of work in designing your questionnaire. Another thing that you should take into account is that questionnaires should not be too long. So there's a tendency for people to ask endless questions, but nobody, I think, wants to sit down for more than 10 minutes. So I would never do a questionnaire that's more than 10 minutes unless you can really say to people, okay, this is what you get out of it. You get money, or you are. So what we often do in England is you go have a prize draw. So if you want to participate, you know, you make a chance to win some money. Okay, so for example, for me personally, that is an incentive to, or if I get something, or I know I'm in a prize draw, that's really good for me. I would do it. You know, if I know I can win £100, €100, or 10 million forints, then I would say, oh yeah, do that. Now, okay, so that was so far. Okay, go back to this slide here where we are. I've just talked about setting up an online questionnaire. Now I would like to talk about online experiments. I should say that when I started PsyToolkit, I really started PsyToolkit because of experiments. I never did online surveys, but when I started doing the online thing, I thought, oh yeah, you need to ask people some questions. So that's why I developed this whole initially it was very simple. You just had some questions where you could say whether you're a man or a woman, but I've developed it over time. So the experiments is really, I think, what makes PsyToolkit particularly unique. And like with the surveys, it is a scripting language. So in PsyToolkit, for example, if you set up an account, you get one example experiment. You see there's a script here, okay? And that script, to learn that script, that takes time. I'm not sure how easy or difficult it is for people who have no background in programming. I mean, it might be quite difficult. The good thing is that there's a library with experiments. So if you cannot write your own experiment, you can just copy and paste one and use that. That's what most students seem to do, actually. And then you can make some changes to it. I mean, I think that's the best way to do it. But at the same time, there are also people who make amazing experiments. When I see it, I think, wow, I didn't know you can do something so nice. I want to say a few things about this website. Before I say anything about the scripting language itself, I can go over one experiment with you if that's helpful. But what you should know, first of all, is that, okay, so you enter code to write your experiment, right? So that's, but then, if you go down the page a little bit, there is something called compile and run. Compile means basically that you tell the computer, my script is ready, make runnable code out of it that works on a computer. That's called compile. If you click that button and your code is working, it will say successful compilation. You can now run the experiment. And then if you run, then it actually runs in the computer. Now, this is not ready for an online study yet, okay? So that's different, but you can see whether it works. You can see whether you can collect the data. So this takes some time. Even for me to write an experiment really from scratch, that would take me at least a whole day, maybe several days, because there are all sorts of things you need to design the stimuli, you need to think about it. It takes time. It takes me, at least as if it's something new, might take me a day to think it all through. So it's not something that you do in 5 minutes. Now, okay, so you can make it runnable. And then, for example, if you run it for example, it's a assignment task, whatever the stimuli are, you can look at it and you can do it with the computer, right? So, and then there's a button back to experiment editor. This is the scripting box. Yeah, and about the output, I should also say that, in the script, there is one line called the save line, and it only outputs what you ask it to output. That's different, for example, from E prime, which you get a whole file with all sorts of information that you might not. I find it personally, and students also find it confusing. If you get all sorts of information that you might never know. So typically, there are only 2 or 3 numbers that you want, like the reaction time, whether people made a mistake. That's maybe all you want, and the condition it was in. So if that's all you want, you can just ask it, or you can have no data at all if that's what you want. I mean, it really depends. So the experiment scripting language, very important. The experiment scripting language is different from the survey scripting language, right? We talked about how to set up a survey. That's actually a very simple scripting language, very easy to learn. The experiment scripting language is much more complicated because it allows you to do all sorts of sophisticated things, and that just makes it more complicated. It's different from E prime, where it's more like point and click. So this is scripting, so you need to type the code. I think, okay, the experiment scripting language is not difficult to learn. I mean, that is obviously depends on you. So that is a very personal thing. Some people find it easy, other people find it hard. And it's really a matter a little bit as well of how much time you want to spend. I mean, I think if you want to learn this, you should say, well, I'm going to spend at least 3 days, do nothing else. I'm going to learn it. That's what it takes, I think, at the very least. But that's with any skill. Try to learn a language. Like I've tried to learn a new language recently, and I never really managed that much because it just takes so much effort to do, and learning is hard. So, Right. PsyToolkit scripting language has many functions to do all sorts of things, like such as show stimuli. You know, it shows something on the screen like a red arrow, as you just saw in the example. You can play sounds. You can ask the system to press a button on the keyboard or on with the mouse. You can save reaction times and other data to the output file, such as the condition or whatever. You can have conditionals, right? So if people make a mistake, show error message. Or if people do it right, say, well done. These sort of things. You can randomize trials in different ways. So that's that. And we can go over a script if you want. But before that, we're coming to the end of my main talk now. What's important to realize is that you can store and analyze your own data as well via the website. So there, at the end of surveys, you can embed experiments in surveys. That's basically a question type that says prepare and download participant data. And if you click that button, you get a spreadsheet. Also, there's a quick web page where you can say how many, quick summary of the survey data, how many participants have completed the survey, how many uncompleted surveys are there. You can follow your online questionnaire. As I said here, so if you want to download it, you press the prepare data files button, and then actually it just if you have a very large survey, it might take a few seconds. Then you download it, and you download it as a spreadsheet file. The spreadsheet file, when you open it in your software, I don't even know if you can read it, but there's one file called data. That's an Excel. It saves it as Excel. The reason why it saves it Excel is that Excel files are very easy to import in SPSS. It also saves it as CSV, which is another spreadsheet format, which actually is very easy in R to import. And then there are all sorts of other files. Every participant's individual file. The survey files, they have like this very funny long number that's in computer science, that's called UUID, unique, it is universal unique identifier. That is sort of like a random number, so that you never get the same number for two participants. And this is typically, if you want to do a basic analysis, a very simple one, you do not need to look at the individual data files. Everything will be analyzed for you, including the data from the reaction time experiments. You need to set that up. You say, which column contains the reaction times and so on. The way it works really is, say, for example, you have your survey, and there is a assignment task, say, where you have 4 conditions. What it does is, for each participant, it has the answers to the question, how old are you and so on. And then it will have the mean reaction time and the mean error rate in each of the 4 conditions that you have in that experiment in your spreadsheet. This is the way I designed the system. Actually, many people want to have this automatic analysis, especially for students. It's very nice if they get a practical. All I ask them is, okay, look at the reaction times in different conditions. So, but of course you can get all the raw data and do it yourself. If you open the data file, this is what it looks like. This is probably too small to read, but so you get the spreadsheet with, for every one line is one participant, and then you get the answers, and you get different files. But also, what's quite handy, I think, or practical to have is, you see when they started, when they ended, how long the survey took. I think that is something many people want to use, because, say, for example, if somebody reduces 10 hours for a survey, which, then this person somehow was doing something strange or was not taking it serious, which is actually one of the biggest problems in surveys anyway. So what I often do is, when I run an online survey, where I really want to, with an experiment, I ask people whether they were tired or not. So that's good to know whether they took it seriously. Because some people just go and they say, I just want to try it. And they will honestly say, oh yeah, I didn't take it seriously. I just wanted to see what happens. So you can ask that. And you can ask people, for example, if they have taken alcohol or drugs, which is also, you know, so many people, they do it in the evening, they drink some wine, do the experiment. Okay, final slide here, how to get help. Now, the first thing to do here is check the frequently asked questions on the website. So there are questions that people ask quite often. So you can check that. You can try to find it in the documentation. There's also, since a half a year or so, I have made a forum where you can post your question. And I check the forum almost every day and I answer the questions there. The nice thing with the forum is that if you know, many people ask the same question, and that's quite nice, then the answer is available for everybody. So that's why I like it if people, but you can also send me an email. Well, that's really it. What I could do is have a really short break, and then if you want to, I can, you know, either go into specific questions, or I can show you how an experiment actually is coded, if you find that useful. So let's just first maybe give me 1 minute to recover. All right.